Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajadanandana Yashodanandana Brajadanandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajadanandana Yashodanandana Brajadanandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajadanandana Yashodanandana Brajadanandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjari Hari Jayam Vishnu Paraparamansa Parvajakacharya Ostatara Satashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Jai. All glories to Sishi Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thanks. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, texts 4, 24 and 25. Pulaho Nabhito Yagye Pulaho Nabhito Yagye Pulascha Karnayo Rishi Angira Mukato Kshotrir Marichir Manaso Bhavat Pulaho Nabhito Yagye Pulascha Karnayo Rishi Angira Mukatokshno Trir Marichir Manaso Bhavat Pulaho Nabhito Yagye Pulascha Karnayo Rishi Angira Mukatokshno Trir Marichir Manaso Bhavat. Ladies? Pulaha, the sage Pulaha. Nabhitaha, from the navel. Yagye, generated. Pulastya, the sage Pulastya. Karnayo, from the ears. Rishi, the great sage. Angira, the sage Angira. Mukata, from the mouth. Akshna, from the eyes. Atri, the sage Atri. Marichi, the sage Marichi. Manasa, from the mind. Abhavat, appeared. Translation. Pulastya was generated from the ears, Angira from the mouth, Atri from the eyes, Marichi from the mind, and Pulaha from the navel of Brahma. So I'm just going to read the second one and we can repeat the translation of that one. Text 25. Dharmastana dakshinato yatra narayana svayam adharma prishtato yasman mrityoloka bhayankaraha. Religion was manifested from the breast of Brahma, wherein is seated the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan, and irreligion appeared from his back, where horrible death takes place for the living entity. Please repeat. Religion was manifested from the breast of Brahma, wherein is seated the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana, and irreligion appeared from his back, where horrible death takes place for the living entity. Purport, that religion was manifested from the place where the personality of Godhead is personally situated is very significant, because religion means devotional service to the personality of Godhead, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita as well as the Bhagavatam. In Bhagavad Gita, the last instruction is to give up all other engagements in the name of religion and take shelter of the personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam also confirms that the highest perfection of religion is that which leads to the devotional service of the Lord, unmotivated and unhampered by material impediments. Religion in its perfect form is the devotional service of the Lord, and irreligion is just the opposite. The heart is the most important part of the body, whereas the back is the most neglected part. When one is attacked by an enemy, one is apt to endure attacks from the back and protect himself carefully from all attacks on the chest. All types of irreligion spring of the back of Brahma, whereas real religion, the devotional service of the Lord, is generated from the chest, the seat of Narayan. Anything which does not lead to the devotional service of the Lord is irreligion, and anything which leads to the devotional service of the Lord is called religion. So there were 4 points that seemed to be important in this purport. First of all, what is the definition of dharma? And second, the highest dharma leads to devotional service. And third, dharma comes from Lord Brahma's chest, adharma comes from his back. And fourth, anything leading to devotional service is religion. Anything that doesn't is irreligion. So on the first point, dharma is mentioned hundreds and thousands of times through the scripture because it's so important. So it's interesting that there are quite a lot of definitions of dharma, and it's translated in English as religion, but dharma is way more than that. So Srila Prabhupada's most often used definition of dharma is that it's the inherent characteristic of something. For example, sugar has to be sweet, otherwise it's useless, and chili has to be hot. Similarly, it's useless if it's not. So that's its inherent characteristic. And so in the case of dharma, that's the inherent characteristic of the living being, that we are servant of Krishna. So he also defines it as that which cannot be changed, and therefore the definition of religion is completely false, because you can change from being a Christian to a Muslim or a Buddhist to a whatever. You can change your religion, but your dharma, the essence of us to serve the Lord, we can never change. He also defines it as our constitutional position. Dharma is our constitutional position as Nityaswarup Krishnadas, the servant of Krishna. He also defines it as the duty of the soul. He defines it, another time he explained that dharma means the natural instinct to obey a superior person. And another one time he said, its dharma is to abide by the orders of the Lord. So he also explained that dharma is enacted by God. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's explained, this is in 6.3.19, Srimad Bhagavatam, real religious principles are enacted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although fully situated in the mode of goodness, even the rishis who occupy the topmost planets cannot ascertain real religious principles. And that verse goes on to say all sorts of other people, including humans, cannot ascertain what real religious principles are, because they're definitely the property of the Lord. They come from the Lord. So, and then there's another one, that dharma is the ultimate religious principle. And also in the 6th canto, there's a verse 6.3.22 which says, devotional service, beginning with chanting of the holy name of the Lord, is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in human society. And another definition is that dharma is always above the material modes, nistraigunya, transcendental. So they're just a few, and really there were so many definitions that Prabhupada gave of what dharma really is. So we can understand it's that intrinsic part of us that is always subservient to the Supreme Lord. So the second point is the highest dharma leads to devotional service. So in the Goswami Ashtakam, Sad Goswami Ashtakam, the second verse talks about Sad Dharma Sangstapakao. So the goal of the 6 Goswamis is to establish that Sad Dharma. Sad Dharma means the eternal religious principles. And how did they do that? They scrutinizingly studied all the scriptures. They spent their lives studying the scriptures. And from that, they were able to prove that the goal of life is to engage in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. That's what they were about. Studying and proving that this is our goal of life. So, all through Bhagavad Gita, of course, dharma is also there. It happens to be the first word in the Bhagavad Gita after Dhritarashtra Uvacha. Then we have dharma kshetra kurukshetra. So it's such a sort of imperative concept which is weaved in and out of so many different scriptures and used in so many different circumstances. So in the Bhagavad Gita, I just went through just the key shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, and from that I pulled out 17 key shlokas which confirm this fact about our dharma is to serve the Lord. So I'm just going to read the one. Bhaktya mam avijanati yavan yaschasmi tatvata tatoman tatvato gyatva vishate tad anantaram, which means one can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. But there's so many different verses which actually discuss this importance of devotional service as our prime goal of life. So, also Prabhupada in this purport, he refers to the fact that Srimad Bhagavatam also explains that we should perform this transcendental dharma without motivation and uninterrupted. So that verse is in first canto, number 2 and number 6, very famous. Savai pung sang paro dharmo, yato bhakti red hok suje, ahoy tuk yapatri hata yayatma suprasidati, which means the supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So if we wonder why we're not completely satisfied, then here it is. If we're doing devotional service intermittently, means the mind is here and there. Sometimes it's on Krishna and we feel very enthusiastic. Other times it's on what's going to be for lunch prasadam, etc., etc. So many things we can think about. So that's why we're not feeling that highest bliss and completely satisfied. But if we can perform devotional service with just constant attention and love and without any motivation, then that we'll be completely satisfied. So we know by reading this verse that, we're pretty, well, for myself anyway, we're way down, way down there, not performing devotional service in an uninterrupted and unmotivated way. But at least we know that that's the goal and that's the way we're going to be completely satisfied, and it's the only way we can be completely satisfied. So I was listening to a class yesterday by Srila Prabhupada, and he was talking about chanting and how chanting is so often we have offences there. But Prabhupada said, you don't give up the chanting, you keep on going. And he said, eventually the heart will be purified and those offences will go. And he also said, so you go on, and he used these words, carefully and lovingly with your chanting. I thought that was very sweet that Prabhupada is inducing us to be careful as we chant and to be loving as we chant, and we'll come out victorious eventually. So, and the way that we can realize the way that we can realize how precious this gift is that we have, the precious gift of devotional service, is to be mindful, more mindful, and take greater care. For instance, if we are going to read one of Srila Prabhupada's books, we pick up the Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, it's a very nice thing to place that book on our heads. Especially, like, for example, Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. So place the book on our forehead and we can pray that some of this transcendental understanding that's within the Srimad Bhagavatam, as we are reading, that it can become manifest in our hearts. We can also pray to the great devotees who are speaking about the glories of Krishna within Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam is living. We can pray to them to help us in our devotional service. So it's a matter of being more and more mindful. And it's so easy to sort of go on automatic and not have that mindfulness. But it's very satisfying if you start to sort of really be more mindful when chanting, when reading, when associating with the devotees. So all through the Srimad Bhagavatam we're encouraged, because of the very juicy exchanges that take place between the devotees and the Lord, or just between devotees when they're speaking about the Lord, we can feel there's a there's a rasa there. There's rasa means juice. It's something that we're after, like bhakti rasamrita sindhu. We're after that taste. So we can, the more mindful we are, the more we can experience that taste there as we read Srila Prabhupada's books. And that's what we want. That's what we're all after. So I wanted to read just 2 verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which prove that, because Prabhupada says that Krishna is the only object of worship in this purport. So I was going to read 2 verses that prove that. This is Canto 1, Chapter 2, texts 28 and 29. In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please Him. Yoga is for realizing Him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by Him only. He is supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know Him. Religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto Him. He is the supreme goal of life. It's pretty strong to explain how Krishna is the object of worship. And, like people have their idea of religion, their God, you're my God. But Prabhupada explains that Krishna is like gold. So if you have gold, that gold, you can't say, oh, this is Christian gold, or this is Hindu gold, or this is... Gold is gold, and gold is for everybody. So in the same way, God is for everybody, the Supreme Lord. So God is for all the people, for the demigods, for the animals, the plants, the insects. So the goal of life for all living entities is to render loving service to that Lord. So even the dogs, there's one dog in Mayapur, I've been told about this dog, that it'll, if you say Hari Bol, it'll jump up and go, Hari, Hari. And there was an elephant in South India, and one of the temples, I think it was Gurdwara temple in South India. His name was Keshava. And the elephants would take the deities on their back when they would go out and circumambulate. But this Keshava always insisted, he would always push his way in to be the elephant that took the deities. Not only that, he would come every morning at 4 o'clock, 4:30, whatever time they had Mangalartik, and he would come to the temple, outside the temple, and he would actually get down and pay his obeisances at 4:30 when the conch shell blew. And when he left, I don't know, one of the priests told me he actually left paying obeisance. I don't know if that's true, but they have, over the gate where you go in, they have his tusks, and they have, the Keshava, they have like a plinth to offer respects to this great devotee who was in the body of an elephant. And then we know in Jarikanda forest, Lord Chaitanya was making all the lions and the tigers and the deer, they were all just dancing in ecstasy. So, so you can't say that God belongs to any particular sect or country or religion or whatever. So I wanted to read, in the spiritual world, of course, all the entities are absolutely in ecstasy. So whether they're creepers or rocks or flowers or the deer or the calves or the clouds or the bees, they are all completely ecstatically in love with Krishna and rendering loving service to Krishna by their various means. So I read one quote from Srila Prabhupada called Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. Beautiful books, 3 volumes by Shyamasundar Das, highly recommended. So this was when Srila Prabhupada was visiting George Harrison with Shyamasundar, and Shyamasundar had the presence of mind always to click on his tape recorder wherever he went with Srila Prabhupada. whenever there was any hint of any action. So he caught so many conversations, beautiful conversations with Srila Prabhupada. This one was what Srila Prabhupada was saying to George Harrison. In the spiritual sky, there is nothing but freshness. Even the flowers picked from the trees and plants remain fresh, for everything in the spiritual sky retains its originality and does not fade. The fragrance of the flowers picked from the trees and made into garlands does not fade, for both the trees and the flowers are spiritual. Paritam vanamalaya. The bees are equally attracted to the flowers, whether they are on the garland or on the trees. The significance of spirituality is that everything is eternal and inexhaustible. Everything taken from everything remains everything. The bees hum around the fresh flowers, and their sweet sound is enjoyed by the Lord. And there's more nice descriptions he gives of the houses, the kalpavrikshes, etc. So the third point was that dharma comes from Lord Brahma's chest and adharma comes from Lord Brahma's back. So everything, we know everything has its source in the Lord. Nothing can be there without the Lord. So the Lord is the source of the good qualities and bad qualities. He's the source of everything. Of course, we know the Lord's qualities are completely positive and transcendental and wonderful. But, you know, the Lord also told fibs, even to Mother Yasoda. I haven't eaten dirt. Balaram became angry with me and he's teamed up with the boys and they're trying to get me in trouble. I haven't eaten any dirt. Not only that, he would go into the gopis' houses and he would spit on their floors and he would urinate on their floors. So, you know, they're not listed in the 64 qualities of Krishna, but Krishna has all qualities. Also, he was very cunning sometimes with his trickeries with the gopis and playing with the cowherd boys. And even on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, there were so many sort of tricks that Krishna played. Also, Krishna is the original cross-dresser. In Dwarka, Krishna used to dress up in women's clothing. And Uddhava once said to him, I can't understand why I'm so attracted to this woman. I'm as attracted to this woman as I am to you. Therefore I can understand that you are dressed up as a woman. So Krishna has all qualities, all sorts of wonderful qualities. It's explained that Lord Brahma's chest is the place where religion resides, where dharma resides, but irreligion is also there on the backside of Lord Brahma. So Lord Brahma produced a son and a daughter, and they were called irreligion and falsity. So they got married. They then produced bluffing and cheating, a brother and sister who got married. They produced greed and cunning. They produced anger and envy. They produced kali and harsh speech. They produced death and fear. And they produced excessive pain and hell. So all these came from Lord Brahma, on the instruction, of course, of Lord Krishna, because everything has to be there in the material world. There's unlimited desires in the material world, so all these things have to be there. And Prabhupada describes that the creation takes place on the basis of goodness, but devastation takes place on the basis of irreligion. So there's that gradual decline from the mode of goodness in the start of creation to total adharma at the end. So it's described here that the Lord is residing in Lord Brahma's chest, in the heart. The Lord resides in the heart, right there along with us. So I wanted to read a verse from the 11th canto about the Lord residing there and why it's so important. 335. Ah, yes. So this is the sage Pipalayana, and he's saying, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of creation, maintenance and destruction of this universe, yet he has no prior cause. He pervades the various states of wakefulness, dreaming and unconscious deep sleep, and also exists beyond them. By entering the body of every living being as the supersoul, he enlivens the body, senses, life airs and mental activities, and thus all the subtle and gross organs of the body begin their functions. My dear King, know that personality of Godhead to be the Supreme. So in other words, Krishna's there, he has to be there alongside us in order to enliven us to start everything, our performances. So that's the witness, the supersoul. And then he goes with us into the new body, and without him we can't remember what the desires were that we had in the past life. Sometimes you'll see this little kid, he's 3 years old and he's playing a piano, some sonata. Oh, you think, oh, how is that possible? Well, it's possible because he did it in his last life and he's remembering it all. So the supersoul is the one reminding. So the fourth point was, I thought it was a very nice point, that anything leading to devotional service is religion. Anything that doesn't is irreligion. So in the Caitanya Caritamrita, it's describing in the Madhya Lila 19.167 how the devotee must serve the Lord as Krishna desires, favourably as he wants. So then the devotee has to know what Krishna wants. So how do we know what Krishna wants? What does Krishna want us to do? Well, this can be achieved by the bona fide spiritual master. They can help us they can direct us, and they'll assist us to find how Krishna wants us to serve. And Rupa Goswami explains that this business of favourable devotional service is the first business of the pure devotees. And one's business should be to satisfy the Lord. So somehow or another, we dovetail our interests with Krishna's. And from that, two side effects happen. The first one is we get free from material designations. We stop thinking, oh, I'm this body, I'm from this country, I'm like this, I like this thing, I don't like this thing. That goes. And also the second thing is one's senses become purified. So that's the effect of, the more we can dovetail our interests with Krishna's interests, then the more these things become apparent. So I was thinking about the old days in Krishna consciousness, because in our temples we had little money, but we had an ardent desire to spread Krishna consciousness. So sometimes we needed things that we didn't have the money to purchase. So there are various stories about the devotees who became quite expert at all sorts of little services that they performed by going out and, for example, stealing flowers from people's gardens. And, one time, our god sister Sukla went out with Ugrashrava because Prabhupada was coming. They didn't have the money to buy beautiful flowers for garlands, so they climbed up, they blackened their faces and they wore black clothes, and they climbed up over the fence into the botanical gardens, and they just stripped the botanical gardens of all the roses, and snuck back out again. The next day, in the newspaper said that the botanical gardens had been robbed. It was right sort of on the front page that the botanical gardens had been robbed. And on page 4, there was a beautiful photo of Srila Prabhupada with a rose garden that went almost down to his lotus feet. But we don't know how many people put two and two together. So, for example, we had to build Rathayatra carts. And how could we do that? We didn't have the money to buy the wood. So I remember Jasumati Nandan saying they would go out at night and they would go around all the carpentry places. And Jasumati Nandan said, if it wasn't nailed down, it was Krishna's. And so in that way they managed to build the Rathayatra carts, etc., etc. And, we did have one devotee. He's still with us, a god brother, called Guru Kripa Prabhu. And he was a pretty heavy character, Guru Kripa Prabhu. And he used to find it very difficult to work with anyone, and he was always writing to Prabhupada to complain. All the devotees in the temple were writing to complain about him. And Prabhupada's so kind, he said, you just to deal through me. So Prabhupada could deal with anybody, all sorts of devotees he was able to deal with so perfectly. So Guru Kripa in the end went to Japan with quite a lot of devotees, and they managed through various tricks and a little bit of stealing, they managed to send all the money pretty much for the Vrindavan, to build the Vrindavan temple. So sometimes the devotees had complained that, this wasn't gained through very honest means, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, if a cow kicks but she gives milk, it's okay. So they built that Vrindavan temple. And I know that some of the devotees would be a little upset, when this sort of thing happened, when there was some dishonesty. But the goal was somehow to serve Krishna. So, of course, it's not required now. We have so much opulence, everything's there. But there is that story about King Yudhisthira, when King Yudhisthira was asked to discourage Dronacharya so that Dronacharya could be killed by saying that Ashvatthama was killed. Now, Ashvatthama had not been killed, so Maharaj Yudhisthira said, I can't tell a lie. So Krishna said to him, well, you just say it, and then say, be he man... Oh, that's right. Bhima went and killed an elephant whose name was Ashvatthama. So then Krishna said, you go and you say, Ashvatthama has been killed, be he man or elephant, I cannot say. Will you do that? And Yudhisthira said, I agree to that. So then he called out, Ashvatthama has been killed. And then as he said, be he man or elephant, I cannot say, everybody blew their conch shell. Krishna had all of them blow their conch shells really, really loud, so the opposite party couldn't hear. So in that way, Dronacharya became despondent and he was able to be killed, but it was all in Krishna's service. So, so the other side of that is that anything that doesn't lead to devotional service is irreligion. So one may say he's doing his duty very nicely. A brothel owner can say it, a pub owner can say it, a gambling den owner can say it, a slaughterhouse owner can say, well, I'm just doing my duty and supporting my family. But unfortunately, that's not so. They're just accruing so many sinful reactions. So the question is what you're doing leading to loving Krishna? Because that's where we want to be. We want to love Krishna. Krishna wants us to love him. More than we want to love him, Krishna's wanting us to love him. So is what we're doing leading to loving Krishna? So that's our goal. So sometimes we may, we have so many shortcomings. There are so many reasons why we are not able to reach that goal of loving Krishna. But, it does take introspection. So if we are examining all the time, what can I do that's going to connect me more with Krishna? How can I be closer? Sometimes we have these knots in the heart. Maybe we've got some anger towards someone, and it kind of feels like a knot in the heart. So if we happen to leave this body with that knot in the heart, then that is going to go into our next life, and we're going to have to deal with that problem next life. So we have to get rid of all these feelings in order to, have a pure heart so that Krishna will reside there. So it's not easy, but it is very important for us to make that introspection and to pray to Krishna. Prabhupada's always saying, you pray to Krishna, he's very kind, he will help you. And sometimes we can have that experience. We pray to Krishna and we really pray, and then something happens, and then you just feel so grateful. Oh, Krishna was so kind, he fulfilled that for me. So Krishna is our greatest friend within the heart. We can always turn to him, and we can know that he will always help us. So thank you very much for listening, and if anyone has anything to refute or ask about or comment on, please do so. Right.
Thank you for the class, Ambika Prabhu. Just in case anyone gets any notions about stealing flowers, in Nectar of Devotion it actually says it's an offence to offer flowers that are stolen.
There you go.
We had to do it. I was also one of the flower stealers in the early days. Chidahari would drive the combi van and I'd be perched in the back, and then we'd see a nice bunch of flowers, some flowers in someone's garden. I'd quickly slide open the door, run out, grab, jump back in the combi and zoom off. But we had no money.
That's right.
As you said, and we had not enough Lakshmi for food.
That's right. Yes.
For Boga, we used to have to go to the greengrocers where they were throwing out their old unsellable things, and we would try and retrieve them from there. So there was good cause, but these days, as you say, there's no need, and definitely it's an offence to offer stolen flowers.
Peru?
Caritamrita. Hi Krishna, you always give such lovely classes, thank you. You were mentioning just then about the cleansing of the heart, the knots in the heart, the anger, all the things that we all hold, to some degree. What I notice is there's this, maybe it's an immature way of thinking it, is that, we recognize, okay, we've got a knot in the heart, say it's anger or frustration, problem with a relationship. And we know what the platform is. The platform is to be free from that. And that can sometimes lead to almost like repression of it, or just pretending like it's not there because you don't want it to be there. Whereas I'd like to know your opinion on this. Is I find that addressing that, opening it up, speaking to people about it is actually more beneficial, as opposed to kind of shutting it down and trying to pretend like it's not there. Mm-hmm. Would you be able to speak on this topic a little bit?
Well, if we do have a problem with a person, the very best thing is to go and speak to them. And the way to do that is with love. Because if you approach someone in a loving way, they don't become offended. And if you approach them in the way that, I'm feeling this, then they can't say, no, that's not true. You know what I mean? If you say, oh, you're like this, they can say, that's not true. But I'm feeling intimidated when blah, 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 then it's coming from a humble platform. And if you do it in a loving way, there's so much more likely to, feel, because there's openness there. Whereas if it's like accusatory, that immediately closes up the heart. So, yeah, it's the best thing. And sometimes we have to sort of meditate a little bit and use our intelligence on how I can best approach, how I can deal with this. And it also takes us prayer, that Krishna can help you and with that. But it's called God-given intelligence. So Krishna, all the ways to deal with things are there in us, but we've got to sometimes ask Krishna for the intelligence to do it in such a nice way that no one will be offended. And oftentimes that's that enough that you just go at that person enough, even if you don't feel they've fully resolved things, but it can just take away that thing that was in the heart. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Right. Thank you for this nicely prepared, beautiful references. I have an open-ended question about George Harrison and something that Prabhupada told him. I've thought about it for years, and I still don't have a definitive conclusion. I was wondering what your thoughts are. As some of us know, and I'm not coming in with any sort of rhythmic, I don't believe in that. At the same time, I don't think Prabhupada, and I'll just describe what he said, to George Harrison, because perhaps he thought George Harrison was not strict enough in his practice. So eliminating those two things as a preamble, as some of us know, Prabhupada told George Harrison, like, you don't need to be, you don't need to move into a temple. You don't even need to be initiated. You are I think he said, you are Hari's son, the son of Hari. So I honestly ask, how do we understand that statement by Prabhupada to George Harrison, where he told him, like, you don't even need to.
I've just been reading that, because he was doing the best work. He'd spread the holy name all over the planet. Because of his songs, people all over the planet knew about Krishna and were chanting Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada felt that the best thing for him was to continue to write songs, and actually it's very sweet. Prabhupada says, I can give you some themes for the songs, and Prabhupada was giving him all these different themes. And if you notice with George's songs, they get more and more devotional, as he went on. So he didn't feel that the best could have been attained by him, shaving up and being initiated. He felt like, if you stay and do what you're doing, Krishna will bless you. And then he gave the manna to the devotees, gave this beautiful place. They're still living there. So his service, Prabhupada thought that he could do more service in his particular dharma that he was living. He wasn't fussy about him joining up and.
Following on that, like today, at least in today's context, we see that most devotees remain in their home and so on, don't even shave their heads if they're men, and still they receive initiation. So I'm just really curious about that. And also we have some references, they're rare, but we have some references of Prabhupada, for example, initiating some devotees without requiring them to get shaved. There's, what's his name? Hari Shori Prabhu tells a story. What's his name? Ambarish Prabhu. We see pictures of him. And that was in a monastic ISKCON of the 1970s. But specifically, not the issue of joining the temple, but specifically about the initiation. Why did Prabhupada tell George Harrison, you don't need to be initiated? That's what kind of boggles my mind.
Because he felt like he was a natural devotee. He was naturally a devotee, and he didn't feel like he needed to do the externals that we do. So we can only go with Srila Prabhupada's decision. There's no fifth promise, no meeting, no hair. There's no such promise, and Prabhupada wasn't expecting that through generations everybody's going to shave their hair. Like, actually it's just for brahmacharis, really, shave the hair is brahmacharis. But in those days it was a bit more strict. But Prabhupada wasn't expecting that. He just wanted us to follow the principles, chant 16 rounds, and somehow or another learn to love Krishna. That's what he wanted.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
I asked Mukunda Maharaj the same question about George Harrison. Mukunda Maharaj replied that George Harrison getting initiated wouldn't necessarily be the best thing for him. That was more or less the answer he gave. He had full blessings of Prabhupada, so it was as good as initiation. Yeah. But for George Harrison to get shaved up, vows, live in temple, etc., he was doing far more in his, more outside life.
Yeah.
So that was the response Mukunda Maharaj gave.
Yeah, that's right. And even like right now, I forget his name. Radhanath Swami has a disciple who's very famous. He talks. Sorry? in England. No, anyway, he's got long. I forget his name. Huh? He's got a no. He's a commentator, social commentator, and he is initiated. But he said, no, don't stop what you're doing. Don't shave your head. Keep doing what you're doing. So sometimes that's the Guru's instructions. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Hare Krishna, Jai Krishna.